"Leave it. It's just trash." That's what someone shouted as traffic flew past. But the old man didn't listen. He stepped into the breakdown lane, knelt slowly, and gathered the wind-tossed American flag with both hands like memory itself. No cameras, no ceremony, just silence and dignity. 3 hours later, a black SUV pulled into his driveway. 6 Marines stepped out. No questions, no speeches, just a salute. If you believe quiet respect deserves to echo, comment, honor below. Harlan Shaw moved through life like a shadow, quiet, steady, rarely noticed. At 78, his steps had slowed, but his posture remained military straight. Years had weathered his face into deep valleys and weathered ridges, yet his blue eyes remained clear as morning sky. Folks in Millridge knew him as the widower on County Line Road, the one who still wore those impossible-to-replace brown work boots polished every Sunday, the one whose faded army hat never left his head except during prayer or the national anthem. Harlan had outlived his Elaine by 11 years, outlived most friends too. His only companion was a 12-year-old retriever named Rusty who ate more than his fair share of kibble. Tuesday morning found Harlan driving his ancient Chevy pickup toward town. Rusty needed dog food and Harlan needed his weekly coffee at Ruby's Cafe. The spring rain had passed, leaving the asphalt gleaming. Harlan drove cautiously, hands at 10 and 2, his eyes still sharp as a rifleman's, caught everything. That's why he noticed at first a flutter of color at mile marker 42, red, white, and blue dancing in the breeze amidst roadside litter. Harlan's hands tightened on the wheel. He pulled onto the shoulder, hazard lights on, door open, one boot on the ground, then the other. The morning traffic buzzed past him at 60 miles per hour. A semi blared its horn. Someone leaned out a car window. "Get off the road, old man," the driver shouted. "It's not worth dying for." Harlan didn't turn, just limped forward with the determination of a man who'd marched through jungles half a century ago. When he reached it, his breath caught. A full-sized American flag lay trampled in the mud, not some parade handout, but a proper cloth flag, the kind that had covered the caskets of men he'd known. Mud-streaked, wet, but intact. Harlan knelt with considerable effort, his left knee, the one with shrapnel still embedded, protesting sharply. He gathered the flag with reverent hands, lifting it from the earth as tenderly as he might lift a fallen comrade. He held it to his chest, sheltering it against the wind. Then, with fingers gnarled by age and hard work, he began folding, triangle after triangle, the way he'd been taught. His movements weren't perfect anymore. Arthritis saw to that, but the intention was flawless. When he finished, he tucked the flag under his arm and made his way back to the truck. He placed it carefully on the passenger seat. Harlan drove home in silence, only the sound of tires on asphalt breaking the stillness. Just another Tuesday morning errand, just another old man's quiet ritual, unnoticed by all but one pair of eyes. 2 cars behind Harlan's Chevy, a young man named Caleb Foster sat rigid in the passenger seat of his father's SUV. At 22, buzz cut, fresh, and posture perfect. He'd returned home yesterday after completing Marine Corps boot camp at Paris Island. "Dad," Logan said, pointing, "did you see that retired gunnery sergeant James Mitchell glance at the old pickup? The guy on the shoulder, what about him?" He stopped for a flag. It was just lying there in the mud, and he knelt down and folded it properly. The gunny's expression shifted. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. Perfect triangles like we learned." Something unspoken passed between father and son, a recognition that transcended generations of service. "Get his plate number," the gunny said quietly. Logan was already typing it into his phone. Back at home, Harlan placed the folded flag on his kitchen table, still damp but cleaner now that he'd dabbed away the worst of the mud. He would need to properly clean it later. He put a pot of stew on the stove, the same recipe he'd made every Tuesday since Elaine passed. Practical, efficient, solitary. The afternoon light slanted through his kitchen window, casting shadows across the flag's triangular silhouette. Harlan occasionally glanced at it while chopping vegetables, as if ensuring it was still there, still safe. Meanwhile, Gunnery Sergeant Foster had made some calls. "Dan, it's Jim Mitchell. Need a favor. License plate, trace personal matter." "Yeah, it's important." 20 minutes later, Harlan Shaw, 78, lives on County Line Road. 3 more calls, and the ripple spread through the military community. A first sergeant at the nearby Marine Corps Reserve Center nodded. "We'll handle it, Gunny. 6 of us. Dress blues, 2 hours." Logan insisted on coming along. The 3 black SUVs pulled up to Harlan's modest farmhouse at 6:17 p.m. Just as he was ladling stew, the sound of vehicle doors closing in unison made him pause. Visitors were rare. He wiped his hands, adjusted his hat, and moved to the door. Through the glass he saw them, 6 Marines in perfect formation, dress blues immaculate. Harlan opened the door, slowly, confusion evident in his expression. Logan raised his right hand in a crisp, formal salute. The others followed in perfect synchronicity. None spoke. Harlan stared, momentarily frozen, then muscle memory from another lifetime took over, and his own hand lifted to return the salute. "Sir," the senior officer finally said, "permission to enter." Harlan stepped aside wordlessly. "We came to thank you, sir." The officer continued, removing his cover. "For what?" Harlan asked, voice rough from disuse. "For reminding a generation what it means to respect what others forget." Logan noticed a shadow box mounted on the wall. Inside, carefully arranged army medals, a bronze star, a purple heart, jump wings, an airborne patch. "Sir," Logan said softly, "you served." Harlan's answer came after a pause, simple and unadorned. Once the word hung in the air, carrying the weight of jungles and firefights, of brothers lost and promises kept. 82nd Airborne, sir," the senior Marine asked, gesturing to the patch. "Yes, 2 tours, 67 to 69. A younger Marine produced a carefully folded flag, new, crisp, immaculate. "We'd be honored if you'd accept this, sir, to replace the one you rescued." Harlan glanced at the mud-stained flag on his table, then back at the pristine replacement. His weathered hand rested lightly on the older flag. "This one's earned its place," he said quietly. "Just needed someone to bring it home." The Marines exchanged glances, a silent communication of profound respect. For nearly an hour they sat in Harlan's modest living room. Few words exchanged, none needed, just the quiet communion of men, bound by an oath transcending generations. When they finally left, each Marine shook Harlan's hand firmly. No speeches, no ceremony, just unspoken recognition. As the SUVs pulled away, Harlan stood in his doorway, watching until their taillights disappeared. For the first time in years, the silence in his home felt a little less empty. The next morning, Logan posted a single photo, the mud-stained flag folded into a triangle, resting on a wooden table beside worn brown boots. Caption: "Not all heroes wear uniforms anymore, but some still live by them." By noon, the image had been shared 5,000 times. By evening, military pages with millions of followers had reposted it. Comments flooded in. "My grandfather would have done the same. Missed that generation. Drove past mile marker 42 yesterday. Saw that flag in the mud. Kept her driving. Now I know why I felt ashamed. This hit me hard. Respect isn't taught anymore, it's shown. I was 3 cars behind. Honked at an old man on the roadside. Never felt smaller than now." The local newspaper caught wind of the story. A young reporter called Harlan's landline 6 times before he finally answered. "Miss Shaw, we'd like to interview you about the flag incident." A pause. "Nothing to say about it, but sir, people are calling you a hero, then they're using the word wrong. Heroes don't come home." He hung up gently. The story ran anyway. Flag folded in silence. A veteran reminds us all. The photo appeared on the front page. People in Millridge began to notice Harlan differently. At the market, the cashier refused his money. At the gas station, he found his tank filled by an anonymous customer. After Sunday service, a Vietnam veteran who'd attended the same church for 15 years without speaking to him approached with an extended hand. Harlan accepted these gestures with quiet nods. It wasn't what he'd wanted, but he understood the need behind it. Hunger for something authentic in a world satisfied with symbols over substance. 7 days after the roadside moment, an official envelope arrived. Marine Corps seal in the corner. Return address, Office of the Commandant. Inside, a single page on heavy stock paper, handwritten at the bottom. "Your action was unseen by most, but unforgettable to those who saw. With deepest respect, General D.H. Berger, Commandant of the Marine Corps." Harlan read it twice, then placed it in the cedar box that held his discharge papers in Elaine's last letter. On Friday, a formal invitation arrived from the Marine Corps Reserve Center. Flag retirement ceremony for worn flags. Would Harlan attend as guest of honor? He almost declined, but Rusty nudged his hand as if offering canine wisdom. "All right," Harlan muttered. "Just this once." The ceremony was scheduled for sunset. Harlan arrived early, wearing his one good shirt, an army hat. He took a seat in the back, hoping to observe quietly. But the base commander spotted him immediately. "Mr. Shaw, we'd hoped you might say a few words." Harlan shook his head. "Not one for speeches, just a minute or two, about what the flag means to you. Don't need to tell anyone that. If they don't know by now, words won't help." When the moment came, Harlan walked slowly to the front. The gathered crowd fell silent. The commander stepped aside, yielding the microphone. Harlan looked at it, then passed it to the faces watching expectantly. "No speeches," he said simply. "I already spoke." He gestured toward the mud-stained flag now properly cleaned and mounted. Every eye followed his movement. "That's all I have to say." He stepped back, and in the silence that followed, something more profound than words filled the space. Understanding, recognition, respect. As the ceremony concluded, they presented Harlan with a new flag folded with military precision. When he accepted it, every Marine present raised their hands in salute, not to the flag, but to the man holding it. Harlan returned to his truck afterward. Logan was waiting beside it. "Mr. Shaw," the young Marine said, "would you teach me how to fold it the way you did on the highway?" Harlan studied him for a long moment. "Come by Sunday," he finally said. "Bring anyone who wants to learn." Harlan placed the commandant's letter in his cedar box, alongside discharge papers, and the faded photograph of Elaine in her wedding dress, artifacts of a life lived in chapter. The flag he'd rescued now had a proper home pressed between two sheets of glasses in a simple oak frame he'd crafted himself. He hung it where morning light would touch it first, beside the window overlooking his east field. The new flag remained folded in its presentation case, pristine and untouched, a bridge between his past and someone else's future. 2 weeks after the incident, without fanfare, the county road department installed a new sign near mile marker 42, "Shaw Turnout in Honor of Quiet Valor." Harlan learned about it from his neighbor. "You know they named that pullout after you, right?" Harlan shook his head. "Don't need my name on anything." "Well, it's there anyway. You should take a look." 3 days passed before curiosity got the better of. He took the long way into town, scout riding shotgun. As they approached the bend, Harlan slowed the truck. There it was, simple green sign, white lettering, nothing elaborate. He stopped briefly, nodded once, then drove on. That Sunday, Logan arrived as promised. He brought 2 other Marines and, surprisingly, a local high school teacher with students. "Hope it's okay," Logan said. "Mrs. Darby teaches civics. Thought this might be important." Harlan nodded, leading them to his back porch where he'd laid out 3 flags. The first hour passed in near silence, just Harlan's occasional instructions and the rustle of fabric as young hands learned the precise folds. No speeches, no lectures, just the tactile learning of a ritual passed between generations. Word spread quietly through Millridge. The following Sunday, more veterans joined. The Sunday after that, a scout troop arrived. Harlan never advertised these gatherings, but each week his porch filled with people drawn to something authentic in a world increasingly satisfied with digital approximations of connection. Something shifted in Millridge too. At the football game, the color guard performed with new precision. At the town hall, the flag was raised with deliberate care rather than hurried obligation. The Memorial Day ceremony, usually sparsely attended, drew a crowd that stretched beyond the town square, not because of speeches or campaigns, but because one man had demonstrated what belief looked like when separated from spectacle, what respect meant when no one was watching. Harlan remained largely unchanged, still quiet, still solitary, but sometimes now when he walked scout through town, people nodded in a way they hadn't before, not with celebrity recognition, but with something deeper, acknowledgement between citizens who shared understanding of something worth preserving. One morning a year later, Harlan drove past Shaw Turnout and noticed something new. Someone had placed a simple stone marker beneath the sign. No words, just a small American flag secured in a holder standing straight despite the breeze. Harlan didn't stop this time, didn't need to, because every time someone passed that sign, they didn't just remember a moment captured in a viral photo. They remembered a man who picked up what others had left behind and never asked for thanks, which was after all the most important part of the story. Not that Harlan had rescued a flag from the mud, but that he'd done it when he thought no one was watching. Subscribe to Steelheart Stories if you believe some honors aren't awarded, they're carried.